And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have a bunch of news stories this week. It's going to lean a little heavy on the motorcycle side. It was just the EICMA Milan Motorcycle Show, so we've got a few more stories from there than usual. But we've got some nice bike stuff as well, electric bike, anyways. We've got a new e-bike from Tenways. A little bit of bad news. California killed off its e-bike voucher program. We've got a review of an electric scooter from VMAX. And then we're going to jump into some motorcycle stuff with Zero launching a new model, though it's a bit smaller than some of you might have expected. Muse got something interesting. LiveWire showing off their new mini electric motorcycles and a bit more. So where are we going to start with this week, Seth?
All right. California quietly kills e-bike voucher program, funnels funds into cars instead. Boo.
Yeah, I don't know why I decided to lead off with this one. That's kind of a buzzkill, but yeah. So this is, this one caught me out of left field. Now, to be fair, the California e-bike program has been like mismanaged from the start, right?
Yep.
Like it took years to get rolling. It's administered, or it was administered by a nonprofit called Pedal Ahead. There have been cases of mismanagement, accusations of corruption, just all sorts of problems in that program, which is very unfortunate. So it did not have the best start, but it had been running somewhat functionally since last year. Fairly large vouchers as well, offering about 1750, I think, $1,750 plus potentially another 250 depending on the applicant's status. So the goal there was, of course, to help people who can't afford an e-bike but would be largely benefited by that form of independent transportation to be able to purchase it. Unfortunately, we've learned that CARB has now killed off the program, didn't even announce it. It just did it without any press, any official announcement. And it turns out that the funding that remains, which is about $17 million, or over half of the original allocated funding, is being instead pushed into the Clean Cars for All program, which is designed to sort of make up the gap after the one big beautiful bill, so to speak, removed that federal incentive for buying electric cars. So not only has CARB killed off the e-bike voucher, but it's taken that money and instead put it into cars, which is almost like salt in the wound. Not that electric cars aren't good, but they're
Better.
a different, yeah. They're Some would say they're less bad, and like if you have to drive, at least drive an electric car. But the whole point of this was that like there are a lot of people that can't afford a way to get around, right? Like if you can afford an electric car, it's just, $7,500 makes it better for you than you can afford an e-bike. Like that's not the issue. There are people that can't even afford, a $1,500 e-bike. And so that's what this program was for. And this is just incredibly frustrating because California, I mean, realistically should be leading the country in programs like this, right? Like instead, cities like Denver are leading the country, and California's just been left in the dust. Now it's somewhat murky where this came from. Because there was no official announcement, but people who are familiar with the program have said that this basically came out of the governor's office, who is supposedly doing like everything they can to push more money into the Clean Cars for All program to sort of make up the gap from that federal incentive being canceled. And so again, like I get it, especially for like a car heavy state like California, like they want to continue that program as much as they can, but this seems like an awful place to be pulling those funds from, even if the program was that mismanaged in the beginning. Now, like I said, it had its own problems, right? But these are problems that should have been fixed. It shouldn't have just been killed off, in my opinion, because these voucher programs just do too much good to let things like this die. And especially California's, while we're not hurting for reasons to complain about it, it had some good things, like the fact that it was a point of sale voucher. This wasn't something where you had to buy a $3,000 e-bike yourself and then come tax time you get $1,500 back. Like this was a really well designed, or should have been well designed program that would have actually helped a lot of people, and it did help a lot of people. There were a lot of people that got these vouchers originally, and so it's very frustrating to see the way that this went. Seth, you've spent a lot more time in California than me. You can probably imagine how people are feeling about this.
Yeah, it's got to be hugely frustrating. There's obviously a lot of beach towns, a lot of places that have very rideable roadways. There's, obviously, for voucher programs, you're talking about perhaps lower income areas, but especially with e-bikes, helps get up those hills. Like the difference between an e-bike and a $50 Target bike or Walmart bike for $100 is that it gets you up and down those hills, and obviously California has quite a few hills around, so things to consider. When I think about this, I think about like, all right, they were not creative at all, and basically it, like, most of the money was just going to administration, going, we don't know what to do. What ways can we like offer like people who are governments want this kind of thing? Maybe this is an idea for a post or beginning of a post, but like, all right, so just throwing money at stuff doesn't usually work well. It doesn't typically go to the right people, because the people that hear about these things are probably geeks like you and I, and we're like, oh, $1,500 for, or $750 for a e-bike, that would make my next e-bike purchase a little bit easier. How do we get these things into the right people's hands? Some things I was thinking about is like, all right, you ride the MTA. Maybe if you have an MTA pass, or you perhaps you ride the train from LA to San Diego. There's trains. If you commute along that route, maybe it makes sense to have an e-bike to get you that last mile. Maybe as part of an MTA program, you get, if you buy MTA tickets or MTA stuff, then that gets you money off of a bike. Those are people who are already using public transportation. Those are people that probably can't afford a car. Stuff like that. What do you have any, like, I know this is like, we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but like, I know you're super smart in this area. Like, what kind of ideas do you have for this? Like, where can we better spend the money?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking, because it's like if you go back and you look at some of these programs and you compare ones that are successful with ones that aren't, for example, like, we talk about Denver a lot because that's
Mm-hmm.
like, they're a city on a hill with what a great incentive program they have. And I think it really comes down to who's managing and how's managing these programs, because these governments can't do it themselves. Like, it takes a lot of effort. This is practically a full-time job running these organizations. And so, like, in this case, California went with Pedal Ahead, who really screwed the pooch on this, and probably they should have been cut out much earlier, and perhaps that could have saved this program. But I think what it really comes down to is figuring out the right way and the right partners to implement these things. Like, maybe you take Denver as a model and you say, how did they do this? The way that a lot of countries will go to the Netherlands and look at, like, as a system, how do they develop their roadways, their cycling paths, that sort of thing, and they'll take those lessons and implement them back home. Perhaps we all need to go to Denver and say, all right, let's look at what you did right here. How did you set up this program? How are you running it? What are the requirements? How do you avoid the issues with corruption and mismanagement? And then that can be sort of copy and pasted like a recipe to be used in other places. Because I think, if anything, California right now is an example of what not to do. Now, they had the biggest
Outlet.
population, and yeah, exactly. I mean, their system, we talked about each time they put it up, it would crash within seconds. Like, so they were working on an uphill pedal right there. But I think that there are ways that this can be done, because we've seen different places do it successfully. And to me, that's the answer: is to go to those cities and those states that have succeeded and sit down with them and say, let's draw out a plan based on what you did, because we've seen that yours works.
Yeah, I mean, there's maybe there's a well, every time I think about this, I'm like, whoa, maybe the federal government should get involved, and then I'm like, like that's not a good idea. So yeah, maybe there's like an organization that can, a nonprofit that can be like, all right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna look at everything that's worked. We're going to draw up plans for small cities, big cities, cities with hills, cities on flat ground. Like, we're going to do an outlay, a flow chart. Yes, maybe there's like a nonprofit that can kind of take the best of everything and do this stuff. But hopefully something gets done. Maybe we can do a post on, where to start, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And maybe the nonprofit is a national thing, and maybe that's the way to do it on sort of, a federal or at least a national level that, they can create something that can be reproduced everywhere, but maybe it's not, something that the federal government itself needs to handle.
True. All right, let's move on. Tenways launches new 750 watt all-terrain city e-bike built for comfort and range. You and I both love Tenways. I think the last bike that we checked out was super light, super, like, it was like the best of everything. It was it, you had the belt version maybe?
Yeah, it was the Seago 800, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it
Yeah,
the 600? A lot of their models
it was
start to run together in my head.
it was kind of nice because they sent you the belt and they sent me the chain version, and I think we both loved each of those. So
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes their new bike so interesting, because Tenways for a long time has been known for these lightweight, very efficient, not necessarily high power bikes. They're often 250, 350 watt, that sort of thing, but they're just so smooth, so nice, like well made bikes. And so this one is interesting because this is their new Tenways Wayfarer, and it is much bigger, much more powerful. It's a different type of bike. Now it's rated at 500 watts, but it's more of like a 700 watt peak bike. So it's more typical of the US style commuter bikes compared to what we've normally seen from Tenways, which is very much a European style commuter bike. So to me, this shows that like they're very much focusing on that US market. And this, in fact, is a US market only bike compared to most of their models that are available in many markets. So the Wayfarer here uses a 500 watt Bafang rear hub motor. It is a class 2 bike, but it does have the option to unlock it. So it's basically a class 3 hybrid bike. We see a lot of these class 2, class 3 bikes that are sort of blurring the line there. So if you do unlock it, be aware that depending what the class 3 rules are in your area, you need to consider the legal ramifications, right? Because class 3s can't always go everywhere, that sort of thing. So it does ship as a class 2, which basically makes it pretty much operational everywhere unless you're in an area that doesn't allow throttles. Let's see what else here. It has a fairly large battery, 720 watt hours. So it's going to be 48 volt, 15 amp hours. It is UL certified, which is becoming increasingly more important. We're seeing, I don't know if I'd say most, but many new e-bikes now are immediately coming out with UL certified batteries, because some areas, New York City, I think California's, if they haven't yet, then they're preparing a statewide UL requirement, that sort of thing. So it's pretty much going the way of UL. One thing I really like is the bike includes Apple Find My integration. So if you have an iPhone, or I think there are apps that you can use on non-Apple devices, but you can basically track the bike as long as it's in a fairly populated area and people are walking around with iPhones or other Apple products. To me, that's just like huge extra peace of mind, because a good log is important, but locks basically stop people that don't have the right tools. So if your bike ever does walk away from you, knowing where it is the first step in getting it back. So this one it's interesting to me because it's finally Tenways stepping up and saying, all right, we're going to make more of an American style e-bike. Now it's still a commuter, this is not like a crazy off-roader. It does have a suspension fork, but it's really meant for street riding. It's a bit pricey. It's $2,200. There is they call it the early bird discount at $300 off if you get it in the first couple weeks here, but it's a bit more pricey. Now, Tenways is known for making somewhat better quality bikes. Now, this is not going to be, a Specialized or a Turn, or, especially not a Recent Molar or any like the more high-end bikes that we sometimes feature. But this is probably going to be a bit nicer than your typical budget level bike. So I think that's where they're headed with the pricing there. If you're just going, dollar per watt, there are certainly better options than this one. But if you're looking for a sort of European-minded company, now they say that they're Dutch-based. It's really like a Shenzhen company that has a an office in the Netherlands, I
An
believe. So
outpost. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I wouldn't really call them a European company, even though that's how they describe themselves. But they certainly are European cycling minded. And so if that's what you're looking for, a company that sort of understands that type of cyclist, then this is probably going to be a pretty nice, more powerful commuter bike. I'm hopefully going to be getting one soon to review as soon as they're available. Like I said, I am excited for this one because it combines what we know and love about Tenways with the more American design philosophy. Basically, it gives us a more powerful. Tenways is what it does. So that I am excited for. What do you think about this model, Seth?
All right, this is gonna be controversial. I don't like it. I like the other 10 ways bikes, which were lighter. They were class two. No, they were class one, which I'm okay with. My problem was that it didn't go, 28 miles per hour. It stopped at 20 miles per hour, but it could have went much further. That bike, I still ride it around quite a bit. It's one of my favorites. Um, it just hits the 20 mile per hour brick wall, but like it's such a light bike that I ride around with my girlfriend quite a bit, and I have a little bit stronger legs, so oftentimes I'll just turn off the electricity and ride it like a regular bike, and that particular bike rides really well that way. And they've added so much stuff to this, and like 10 ways, like that bike was really clean, and I'm looking at this handlebars and I see wires everywhere, and I'm like, like I, like they've done all the wrong. I mean, I don't know. I know we need to see the actual bike itself, but it just feels like they've gone in the wrong direction. Like what I would have liked to have seen is like, all right, we're going to Americanize this bike. We're going to let you go to 28 miles per hour. That's pretty much all they needed to do. The heft, like, the battery on the one that I have is small. I think it's not even 500 watt hours. Do you
Yeah, it might be
remember?
360 if I'm not mistaken.
And that thing would go forever because, it's pedal assist. It's a really light bike. So, this has a much bigger battery. Obviously, it has much higher output, but you also have a much heavier bike with a lot of complications. It just feels like, and I hate to say this, but like there's 1,000 different e-bikes that have these specs. Like this is not a new kind of thing. I think 10 Ways was going in the right direction with like focusing on the lightweight, focusing on like motors and batteries that had great output, but like weren't necessarily spec kings. So I don't know. I want to wait till we actually review this to pan it, but I just like my initial gut instinct is like, crap. Like
To you,
they're
it's like
doing.
a slap in the face of what Tenways was.
Yeah, I was kind of excited about like where they're going, and this is just obviously I'm a fan of the belt drive. That's going to make things quiet. I like what 10 Ways has done. Like I think this is hits a lot of the right spec price points, except the price seems like really high, like strangely high. So I don't know. I I uh,
Yeah,
I'm
well,
gonna reserve judgment until you get your hands on one.
all right. Well, what I'm about to say is going to make you like it even less. This one specifically is not belt drive. This is the chain drive. So it just
Oh, okay,
takes away one more thing that you would have liked about it.
right. So yeah, there's
So
nothing to
it's
like
already
here.
losing points.
I
Yeah,
hope.
no,
I
I
hope.
certainly get, yeah, I get what you're saying here that like, it doesn't fit the mold. Now, so I looked it up. It is a 360 or 370 watt hour battery. It's on the Seago
Yeah,
800 that we both enjoy. But that one, I mean, like you said, if you put that at class three and you're going 28 miles an hour, like that battery wouldn't last you very long. So
right.
if they wanted to get that class three performance, they were definitely going to have to, up the power, up the battery, basically do
Make
all
it
the things to
heavier.
turn it into an American
Maybe
style.
maybe that's what they
Yeah.
did. Maybe they were just like turning the knobs, and this is what they ended up with. They're like, oh, we need to,
Yeah.
for people who can't put their leg over a seat post.
And you know, I can see it because I'm sure they were looking at the US market and saying, all right, like we're selling a bunch of these lightweight European style bikes, but there are so many more people buying the, you know, the big boy bikes. And so they
Right.
probably were looking at that slice of the pie and saying we can do that too, which doesn't surprise me. You know, like they're a business and they're looking at what sells. So um, you know, we'll reserve judgment. I personally, I as much as I enjoy those lightweight bikes, and I definitely, you know, enjoyed riding the Seago 800. And I think what you said about being able to turn it off and ride it like an actual pedal bike is important. There's something about going faster and having that more power that speaks to me. So I'm
Right.
excited to try this one. But you're absolutely right that like there's not that much that sets it apart anymore because what used to set Tenways apart is kind of gone here.
Right. All right. We're reserving judgment. Maybe it's an amazing. Maybe the torques. I mean, another thing I really liked about it was how smooth it was, and yeah, hopefully that comes through in this bike as well.
Yeah, to be seen.
To be determined. Yes. All right. Next up, revealed the tiny device police use to catch illegally fast e-bikes and e-scooters.
Yeah, this one Seth actually spotted, and I thought this was kind of a neat share. It's not exactly like, you know, crazy news or anything, but it is fascinating to me because this is basically like a little roadside speed test that the police in Zurich use to test if e-bikes and e-scooters are illegally fast. It looks like it's essentially a pair of rollers that have a speed, like a probably one of those strobing um, speedometers inside of it. And so you can put any bike or scooter on it, fire it up, and this thing will tell you how fast it goes. And this is actually probably more accurate than relying on the speedometer on these things because if you just lift the wheel and you know press the throttle, you're going to get that no load speed, which could be insanely fast. And also, a lot of these things don't have a speedometer, or if they're DIY e-bikes, you know, it was never there to begin with. So in this case, the Zurich police shared on social media that they pulled over someone using an electric scooter, one of these like standing electric scooters, and the thing was going 110 kilometers per hour on their roadside gauge there. That's about 68, 70 miles an hour. So that one obviously pretty illegal. Electric scooter speeds are crazy limited in Switzerland, only up to 20 kilometers per hour or 12 miles per hour, which is like, you know, you can just about run that fast. Though I guess it's a lot easier to do it on an e-scooter. But you know, very, very limiting. But I thought this was just an interesting look at the solutions that some police are coming up with. We've seen something similar in the Netherlands. It's not quite as small as this. This one looks like it would literally fit in a briefcase. The Netherlands, we've seen sort of what look like roadside dynamometers that are a bit bigger that they'll put bikes on. The one thing I wish this did was that it would measure power because it looks like it just measures loaded speed. And so it's going to tell you if it's overly fast, like it's breaking the speed limit, but it's not going to tell you if it's exceeding power limits. Not that I want to like narc on people, but I just think as an engineer, it'd be cool if this diagnostic tool did all the other things as well. So kind of a neat implementation here. Um, if you're in Zurich and you ride an illegally fast scooter or e-bike, you might want to make note of this. Maybe slow down when you see the cops, or just, you know, consider where and how you ride because these things are out there and apparently they're catching illegal e-bikes and e-scooters. Would you want one of these in your arsenal, Seth? Your e-bike
Yeah.
tools?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to test all the bikes that we kind of get in, on one of these things as a portable dyno. Like we get bikes with a lot of claims, and we want to see how fast they really go. So I think that would be cool. I don't know that a regular bike tire would fit on that. I don't
So
know
I
exactly
looked
how
it
that
up.
would
It
work.
is adjustable. I
Okay,
think, you know, there's a limit, but it does adjust. I think they have it on the smallest setting there, and those rollers can expand out to fit bigger tires.
well, that's cool. Have we reached out
Yeah,
to what is that company? Venmo? No, Wanger.
Wanger. Yeah,
Wanger, yeah. We should reach out to them to see if they want us to do a review of it. And
yeah.
for
I tried to find a place to buy it. Like I want to see how much it costs, but it's one of those things where it's like, you know, reach out for you know, more information kind of thing. They don't just put their
yeah, I'm sure there's like some
their-
sort of cop like catalog or something that they put these in.
yeah.
We're not privy to that stuff, sadly. All right, let's move
unfortunately.
on. Yeah, no kidding. I'd like to actually have some of that stuff. All right, VMAX VX2 Hub 33 mile per hour e-scooter review. Fast yet surprisingly stable and affordable.
This one was a fun one. I've been testing a few
What if
VMAX
you could have?
scooters over the years, and the VX2 Hub, I would say, is probably one of their cleanest and nicest balanced scooters so far. By that I mean it's got good speed. It goes up to 33 miles per hour, so we're talking fast but reasonable, right? Like you're not gonna. It's not like these 40, 50-mile-an-hour scooters where like you're taking your life in your own hands. Not that 33 can't be dangerous, but
Yeah, I
it's
was going to say
modest.
33 is a little bit on the edge.
Yeah. And of course you don't have to ride it that fast,
Right.
right? It's
Not
like,
not required.
you know, my mom has a Honda Odyssey that can do 90 miles an hour, but I don't think she's ever done it, right? Like it's there if you ever need to, push the throttle a little harder kind of thing.
When mom needs to run from
Um,
the cops.
There you go. Yeah. She can take the Odyssey or this scooter. Um, it's moderately priced. It's 1,199, I think. So it's not cheap, but it's got some pretty nice specs. I think you're going to see. I really like the turn signals on this one because it's got a few different options here. It does have like the little turn signals down on the deck, which I often like poke fun of for scooters and bikes that have those because they're just like too small, and I don't think most cars see them. But it also has these handlebar mounted turn signals that stick out really far, and you can see them from the front and the back. So I find those are incredibly visible. Here I was talking about wearing the right safety gear, and I mentioned my the gear I wear on my motorcycles and stuff. So I do recommend suiting up if you're going into the 30s kind of thing. The scooter is also just really smooth. It's nicely made. This is not one of those cheap budget scooters. This thing feels solid. It's not an off-roader, but I did, take it through parks. I rode it over like rutted out grass, and it has full suspension. So, when you hit those bumps, it's not long travel suspension, but it doesn't just, shake every bone in your body. It's not like a rigid scooter where like you feel your ankle bones moving around and you feel your wrists like, just shaking themselves apart. This is a full suspension scooter that's going to absorb a lot of that road chatter, and even like some light off-roading like I did, going through nature trails, maybe some fairly smooth gravel roads, that sort of thing. But all told, well put together, nicely designed, good specs, fast, surprisingly powerful. The first time I got on it, I was not expecting it to be this powerful, and I just blipped the throttle and immediately wheelied because I just like I wasn't leaned forward. I just wasn't expecting it, and so you realize this is a scooter that you kind of have to modulate the throttle. We get into a bad habit with like weak e-bikes and e-scooters that we just push the throttle all the way down and treat it like an on-off button.
Yeah.
But when you have a more powerful motor, it's like you don't get into your car and floor it. Like you push the accelerator the amount that you need depending on the situation. Well, this is a scooter with 1900 watts of peak power, and you press the throttle the amount that you need it. You don't just treat it like an on off button. So I was a bit humbled the first time I got on it and accidentally wheelied, but it is very powerful, very torquey. It also has this secret boost mode, which I don't use very often because it's so torquey. But you push the power button 5 times, and you hear a couple beeps, and now you're in like the crazy, it's like super high power mode, which probably kills the range, but it's just like it's wild that something this small is that torquey and powerful. So to me, VMAX VX2 Hub, just a really, really nicely designed, nicely balanced scooter that gives you the performance that's quite good without being, insanely aggressive like those highway scooters, but still modestly priced. You get a lot of budget scooters in like the $600-800 range that are kind of, I don't want to call craft, but like not great quality scooters. And this one at about twice that much gives you something that I would feel comfortable doing 30 on quite often. So to me, this is just a really, really good compromise for price and quality meets performance.
Yeah, I like that. I just noticed on the video that we're watching, if you're watching with us, that there's a USB port, USB-C. The Tenways also had that. I'm a little bit spoiled because last week we talked about the Rivian also bike that charges via USB-C. These things cannot charge via USB-C. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just an output.
All right.
I'm
Uh,
getting greedy.
yeah, I know. And I'm assuming the 10 ways is also not going to be charged that way.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
these are great. I think for me, I'm in the suburbs. I take the train to the city every once in a while. Everyone, I would say once every 2 weeks, I would say. Um, and I kind of want to take a scooter with me, but I'm always like, the scooters that I have are kind of big and clunky, and I kind of get some smack from the train conductors often because um, they don't look like scooters; they look like motorcycles almost. So this one is more like the Bird or the Lime scooters that we see quite a bit in form factor, but a little bit I would say more sporty. I guess those things have to be way more ruggedized. Um, the fact that it does a wheelie though, that's kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you're saying, I mean, it really looks like a smaller, more modest scooter, and so that's why like I was so blown away with the literally the first time I stepped on it, because I was expecting, all right, it's gonna feel like a Bird, it's gonna be like a Go Trax, it's not gonna be
Hmm.
crazy, but no, it's like a sleeper scooter. It's hiding a lot of power in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reviewing a Navi one right now that is great in a lot of ways. Like it's actually a really good scooter, especially for the price. But it like going up hills. I'm pushing 200 pounds going up the hill to my driveway. It really like has issues. And in New York City, there's not a ton of hills. Most people don't hit huge hills with their scooters, but like if there is a hilly area, you kind of need some of that torque. And that I noticed this is rear wheel only, but I do appreciate like a scooter that can actually put out some good torque.
Yeah, and even like if it's just got that sort of like boost mode for when you need it on hills, but you got to have it somehow for those situations where whether it's hills, whether you're a heavier rider, whether you're, got like a bunch of shopping bags in your backpack or on the bars. Not that you should keep bags on the bars on a scooter because they're twitchy enough to begin with, but yeah, you need that power sometimes. And if it's not there, you realize it in the moment that you're lacking.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that this one has that and at a reasonable price. That's good. So, at $1,200, that's kind of the going rate now. I think I'm also reviewing a scooter right now, the Navi. It comes in at about half that, but it's also incredibly well, not incredibly. It's also not great on hills. Uh, Everything else pretty good about it, but so you're kind of paying for the extra power here, and that's going to be like key for a lot of people. All right.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm also about to start a Navi scooter review, but so I was going to see
Oh,
which model you're doing just in case.
yeah.
But it sounds like yours is not the same one. If yours is half the price, because mine is closer to this price, so I'm guessing it's going to be more powerful than yours. So
Is it the
we should have
off-road one?
switched. I don't think it's off. I think is it XT5, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. I don't have it in front of me, and I haven't started yet, but I should
Yeah,
be next week probably.
they pitched me on an off-road one as well. All right, let's move forward here.
Yeah, I don't do enough off-road stand-up scooting. It's just not like my normal use case.
Yeah, I don't think many people do. That's also kind of why.
It's a niche. Yeah.
All right, shifting gears here. I'm very jelly that you got to go to Italy for the big unveil of a bunch of stuff, and I think you're gonna have some more stuff coming up. But one of those is the first look at the Zero Motorcycles' new electric scooter launched today.
Yep. Yeah, I'm barely halfway through my EICMA coverage, so there's more coming. But this is one of the first stories that I got out yesterday or the day before. And it's very interesting. It's Zero Motorcycles has launched an electric scooter. And we're talking seated scooter, Vespa style. If that's what speaks to you, there's no good way to differentiate in English between the scooters, but that's what this is. This is not a stand-up scooter like the Navi or the VMAX we just saw. And it's fascinating because like I never thought I would see this. Like when I walked into the EICMA booth and there were scooters there, I was like, wait, am I in Zero's booth? Like, is this the right place? But yeah, like they're badge Zeros. These are Zero motorcycle scooters. It's crazy. This is the LS1. It's actually got quite good performance. Like, if it's going to wear a Zero badge, you would expect that this isn't going to be like a weak little. And so, I mean, these are 60 mile an hour. Um, marginally highway capable, probably like urban highways, that sort of thing. You're not going to take this on the interstate, at least not for an exit or two before you want to get back off. But these are not like urban only scooters, right? So, if they're coming from zero, they're going to have some at least decent performance here. They look pretty good as well. I mean, they don't look like a zero because I've never sort of considered what a zero in scooter format would look like. And if I did, I don't think it would be this because it's such a foreign concept to me. But they still look pretty nicely designed. They look fairly sleek. It almost seems like it's something that would be coming from, New or Yadi or one of the other major scooter makers. Like it looks like sort of a electric scooter. And that's not a mistake because it is a sleek Asian electric scooter. These are produced as part of Zero's partnership with Zongshen, which is a major motorcycle manufacturer in China. They've got a big electric division, and they've been working with Zero. They also are responsible for producing the XB and the XE electric dirt bikes, sort of the Suron style bikes that come from Zero. So it's not surprising they went back to them with this launch as well. So if it looks sort of like an Asian electric scooter, that's because it is. But it's very nicely done. So I think that they partnered correctly here, and they built something that's quite interesting if Zero is going to put their name on a scooter. Now, I should mention right away that these are not going to be coming to the US. So if you're listening right now in the US and you're thinking, oh, cool, I can finally get like a nice electric scooter. No, you can't, at least not from Zero. These are going to be Europe only. So I don't think they're going to be coming to the US in any time soon either. They're not homologated. You can actually see that they're multiple things. I was talking to James Callahan of Zero, who basically said like, yeah, there were design things that we went with that we knew would look really cool, but weren't going to pass NHTSA regulations. Like the turn signals are part of a continuous light bar in the front there, which like, yeah, it's a cool looking headlight, but it's not legal in the US. So there are things like that that would have to be totally redesigned if they wanted to do this in the US. And from Zero's perspective, they said like, look, there's not enough of a market in the US. So I don't think that we're going to see these anytime soon. But for Europeans, I think you've got a really interesting option here. It's fairly long range. It's 115 kilometers. It's about 70 miles. As far as scooters go, that's pretty decent. You can actually add a third battery to it. It has two removable batteries. You can add a third battery, and then you get up to 170 kilometers or 106 miles. So, how much is that in real world range? Like my Gogoro, they say it goes 140 kilometers, and I really get like 50. So,
Oh,
we'll have to wait and see what like the real world range works out to. But if they're saying 170 kilometers, then you should still probably get some good range performance out of it. I don't know what the final price is. It's supposed to be somewhere around 5,200 euros. It really depends on the country because different countries in Europe have different VATs. And so I think Italy, it was going to be something higher than 5,200 because they've got one of the highest VATs, value added taxes in Europe. But we're talking about something that's like moderately priced. I think 5,200 euro is something like the low $6,000, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe like $6,500. I don't remember what the conversion rate is exactly, but again, like this is not a $14,000 Zero motorcycle, right? This is a smaller, more comfortably sized vehicle, and I think it really speaks to the way Zero is sort of shifting their focus here onto urban, lighter, more moderately spec'd vehicles. Not that they're not going to continue to build and promote their flagship bikes. If you want a 120 mile an hour Zero, you can still get that. But I think they see that those aren't the bikes that are where the market is going. That they're going to have more room for profit and a larger market in all if they focus on some of these smaller bikes. That's why they went with their XB and XE light electric dirt bikes. That's why they're going with this scooter. And I have to imagine that we're going to see more things in this class. Maybe we're going to see sort of like a Rivid style light electric commuter bike. Something like the XE, but in a street commuter version. Something to compete with like the Kawasaki Ninja electric bike. Something small like that. So I don't have any inside information on that, but I think that's probably where Zero's head is. And if they're working with Zongshin this closely, this is their third model now with them, then I think we're probably going to see more of these sort of moderately sized middleweight electric motorcycles would be my guess. The last thing that I should add here is that um, we have seen significant, turnover from some of the top leadership at Zero. Sam Pascal was replaced as the CEO just a few days ago, and I wasn't aware of this because there's been no announcement, but I was told by an Italian Zero employee at the booth at EICMA that the CTO is also no longer with the company. Seth, you and I both know Abe Ashkenazi, and it's unfortunate to hear that he's not there anymore because he was such a driving force there, and he really understood these machines. Like, someone that really got into the weeds on the technical side. He's done just like on the personal side, he's taken Zero motorcycles and done a lot of cool projects. He's converted an old British Mini to be electric drive using the powertrain of a Zero motorcycle. He did it actually on a few cars. I think he did it on a VW bus and a few others. So he's one of these CTOs that is not just stuck in the corner office. Like he's comfortable rolling up his sleeves and getting his hands dirty, wrenching on these things, which I really respect and appreciate. So really sorry to hear that he's not there either. It does leave me with some questions about the sort of the direction and more importantly the health of Zero right now, if they're losing so much of their top leadership, as well as, and it's not just at the top, they've had layoff rounds. Unfortunately they lost their PR guy, which I worked with very closely in my position here, and it's actually made it very difficult to get a lot of news from Zero recently. So it's unfortunate to see that they've had a significant slashing of the workforce there, and it does worry me a bit looking forward. But the people that I did talk to in the booth, they put on a strong stiff lip and or upper lip, and it seems like they're looking towards the future and they're looking towards the models that they're hoping to bring out soon. And so I think that's hopeful, but again, I worry what could be coming.
Yeah, I'm also worried. We saw the Suron style bikes from Zero that were basically rebadged. Now we're seeing scooters that are rebadged. I have to wonder if this is, the ownership of the company saying, okay, we're going to take this brand that we've built and we're just going to import Chinese bikes, slap a Zero, badge on it and sell, try to make some big margins. That's everything is kind of looking that direction. Obviously I hope that's not the case at all, but with the CTO gone, basically the US leadership is gone, the company's moving to Europe. I kind of understand that move because things like scooters are much bigger in Europe, and regular bikes and basically electric bikes, because they don't have the kind of crazy range that you almost need to go between cities in the US. That's just one use case, but I think in the US, two-wheeled road bike motorcyclists usually want crazy range, unless they're city dwellers. So I kind of get the move to Europe as a focus, but also these other moves, the continuation of, putting a brand on a Chinese bike, kind of scary. So we'll keep a close eye on this. I'm also sad to see Sam and Abe. I just looked at their LinkedIn to see if they haven't updated that yet. So I'm going to see what their next move is. Obviously, we'd like to keep in touch with those guys. And we hope Zero's whole line of motorcycles stays in production and continues. But obviously, the big move out of the U.S. to Europe makes our spidey sense is kind of tingling right now, I would say.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm not sure how much of this is like, white labeling a Zongshan bike and how much is sort of co-developed. It does seem like there's some co-development there. We do see from time to time Zongshan models, and I haven't seen this specific model. I also look to see like if they have sort of a stock XC and XB, and it doesn't seem like it, at least in the exact format. So there's a strong base of Zongshan here, but I'm sure that Zero has some pull in the design as well. But yeah, like it's certainly the direction that they're headed, if it's not all the way there yet. Um, I will say that also it seems like Zero still has deep VC pockets, so hopefully they're not in so bad of a position that we're not going to see Zero motorcycles being sold soon. Also, these booths at EICMA are not cheap, so if they're still able to afford a booth, then that's something right there. So hopefully it's not too dire, but yeah, it is something that we need to keep an eye on in the future.
Yeah, we'll certainly do that. All right, let's move on. LiveWire reveals more details on its new lower cost S4 Honcho electric motorcycle.
Yeah, I've been really excited for these. LiveWire, uh, motorcycle startup that sort of spun out of Harley Davidson. For a while, they've had their original LiveWire One, which is like their flagship, super powerful bike. Then they had their S2 platform that they've put out three different models on. Still also quite powerful, 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. So, nothing to sneeze at. But those have all been very big, powerful bikes. And I'm super excited for what is now their S4. Finally has a name. It's called the Honcho line. There's two versions, on and off road. And we've gotten some more information about these. We also got to see them up close at EICMA, so I'm going to have a post about that coming soon. But more importantly, we learned a little more about these things. We still don't have all of the specs, but we do get to see their removable batteries now. Looks like there are two removable batteries. And while they didn't come right out and say it, I'm like 99% sure that these are Kimco's Ionics batteries. Kimco is a large Taiwanese scooter maker. They might be the biggest in Taiwan. Taiwan kind of like leads the world in scooters anyway, so they're one of the world's leading scooter makers. They've been a partner of LiveWire for a couple of years now. They actually own a chunk of LiveWire as well from when it went public. And here you can see there's some Ionics batteries a bit further down the post, and I'm pretty sure those are the same. So I think that's where LiveWire is getting their batteries for this. And it makes sense that they would be partnering with Kimco for the development of this as well, because Kimco already has some nice electric powertrains they've created for their scooters. And if we're being honest, this is largely a scooter in motorcycle format. It's a much smaller, it's kind of a mini bike in a way. And so I would not be surprised at all if there's basically like an Ionics, Kimco's Ionics powertrain in here with the batteries and the drivetrain as well. So we won't know for sure until they give us like full specs and we can compare the power rating and all the technical details. But that's what it's looking like for me. They're also setting this up to be a very accessible motorcycle, both in terms of the size that pretty much anyone can sit on and ride this, but also in the license requirement. In Europe, it will qualify for an A1 license, which is like the simplest, easiest motorcycle license to get. Pretty much it allows you to ride like any moped or sometimes small motorcycles. And it's also often achievable at an earlier age. In some places, it can be, I think, as young as 15, if I'm not mistaken, where you can, or maybe even 14 in France or Italy somewhere. Not entirely sure if there are any Europeans in the podcast that want to let me know about the A1 requirement, but it is sort of the easiest license to get. And so this is designed to make it as easy as possible for people to ride. In the US, in most states, it's just a single motorcycle license. There's not like an A1, A2 sort of situation. So it won't matter as much in the US, but in Europe, it's certainly designed to be super accessible for especially new riders that don't necessarily want to go through such an intensive motorcycle course and licensing process, that just want to sort of do the moped or the scooter course and get that easy to use license. The biggest question for me is how much will these cost, and we don't have any information there yet. That's really going to be the make it or break it situation here, because with LiveWire, they're bleeding money. They're not doing very high volume at all. And that's basically because they've got these fairly expensive, large, high performance motorcycles, which are engineering marvels and get great reviews, but just aren't selling. They've actually reduced the prices considerably from about, I think they were around 16,000. They dropped them down to about $10,000, and so they're doing what they can to sell them, but to become profitable, they're going to need to find models that sell in higher volume. And the goal is that these can actually work. All of the kids that are right now riding Surons, because basically if you're 14, that's what you get. You beg your parents for a Suron and then you've got your own little motorcycle. Well, when you turn 16 and you can actually get your license, suddenly a Suron might not be as cool anymore, and you might want a faster, more powerful street legal motorcycle. So I think that's the idea here, is that this can open LiveWire up to that larger market, similar to what we're seeing with Zero in terms of how they're moving into the scooters and the Suron class vehicles. They're also trying to target that smaller, more manageable sized electric two-wheeler market. So to me, it makes absolute sense. In this case, I like that LiveWire went a bit, crazier with the design. If you're into mini bikes, these things look awesome. You might look at it and think that's a weird looking motorcycle, and that's fine. You're probably not the target market then. To me, I think they look pretty fun. And I think that's been one of LiveWire's strengths, that they've always leaned into interesting sort of more abstract designs. If you look at Zero, basically since the beginning, they've gone very conservative with their designs. It looks like like these days, if you ask ChatGPT to create for you like a generic motorcycle, like that's what would pop out. It's kind of like what Zero motorcycles look like. They're not exciting, but they don't offend anybody. LiveWire, on the other hand, like they make bold choices, and that might turn some people off. But I bought a LiveWire because I thought it looked awesome. Also it goes 0 to 60 in 3 seconds and is super fun. But also I just like the look of it. I got a launch edition. It's got those like purple tiger stripes on it. I think it looked cool, and that works for a lot of people. So I like that the Honcho line here just looks interesting and different, and it's got a bit of that retro mini bike style, but it also has something just unique and unlike anything else out there. So to me, this is fun and exciting, but I can't really tell you how well this is going to work until we know the price. If this is $5,000, I think it's going to sell like hotcakes. If it's 8.5 or $9,000, I don't think it's going to sell. So that's where we got to figure out how LiveWire sticks the landing with the price. Could you see yourself on an electric mini bike like this, Seth?
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun, and especially if it's homologated, I don't have to worry about the popo, So
Yeah.
that's a big plus. I think that's an area that we're seeing a flood of Suron style e-bikes come into the US, and we're seeing kids in the 14, 16, 18-year-old range jumping on these things. And of course, whatever is legal off-road, but on-road, it gets a little bit more curious. Some companies, I think Luna is probably the most obvious, sell the bike as a 20 mile per hour class 2 e-bike, which is a stretch, but technically true. And then they do the brown wire thing where you can cut the brown wire, and all of a sudden you've got a 45 mile per hour e-bike. That's so much fun. So I was curious about this A system they have in Europe, and so I did Google it, and it is pretty interesting because there is quite a bit of variance in the age where you can attain these licenses. So just to go over that really quickly, because this is something I'm going to chat with my kid about. The AM, which is a 2-wheeled, 3-wheeled vehicles with a maximum design speed of not more than 45 kilometers per hour, so about 30 miles per hour, right? As well as like quadricycles. So you're talking basically, 30 mile per hour bike, but those 30 mile per hour bikes in Estonia and France are legal for kids that are 14 years old. That's pretty interesting, because that would be there. I think a lot of parents would like their kids to be on bikes that top out at 30 miles per hour. And, you can have a Suron looking bike that tops out at 30 miles per hour and isn't, menace to society. So Then the A1s are kind of like what I would call today's Surons. Let's see what the so mopeds category, light motorcycle category A1. That would be, you know, a light B. I mean, it's right in the name. You know, it's a light motorcycle, and then obviously A2 and category A, which was also interesting because, like, you know, some places you can't even be, you have to be 22 to ride a certain type of motorcycle in Greece and Denmark and a few other places. So it's very interesting, these categories they break up. But you know, I'm actually I really like the AM and A1 delineation. I think those would be really good um, for kids in the U.S. to, you know, if we're going to homologate bikes, which we probably should start doing at least um, in some capacity. You know, we're talking 30-mile-per-hour stuff that's going to be focused on the road. So
Yeah, and I
interesting
assume
stuff
that's
there.
coming.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of, well, that's the thing. Like, it's frustrating. You can do a lot of things. You can do what New York City does and basically just make, you know, 15-mile-per-hour e-bikes, which, you know, like, basically if you're pedaling hard, you're going 15 miles per hour. Like, so what's the point, really? So yeah, it's a lot of stuff there, but I kind of actually like the you know, for this particular scenario, I do like what the EU is doing. So maybe we can learn from them a little bit. This bike also, I think, is pretty awesome that it's got the battery removable batteries. But I also I am a little concerned that LiveWire is going the zero route, or beginning to go the zero route, and just outsourcing all their stuff to Kimco. That wouldn't be great news necessarily.
Yeah,
But
though in this one, it does seem like it's more shared design. I have a
mhm,
little more insight into this one, and it does seem like it's not a white labeling situation. Like, you know, Kimco doesn't make an electric mini bike like this. You know, they
right,
make motors and they make batteries and that sort of thing. But like Livewire is the only one making an electric mini bike like this. That
right,
sort of thing. You know, so it seems like they've, you know, taken the powertrain out of a scooter, which speaks to how, you know, modular electric drivetrains are to begin with. You know, it's almost like the skateboard of a motorcycle, you know, that you can install in any vehicle, and they've built a mini bike around it. So I think there's a lot more Livewire DNA in this one. And also just like, nothing against Songshen, but like, you know, Kimco's a Taiwanese scooter maker that I think most people would consider would be significantly higher quality than like a Zongshen in China. So they're, of the partners these two have chosen to square dance with, Livewire's dancing with the better partner.
gotcha. Yeah, and so just quickly on specs of this thing, what is the speed range? Do we
We
have
don't
that?
have any we don't have any information on those yet, unfortunately.
And price, obviously.
No, nothing on that. I
Alrighty.
wish I could tell you.
Well, it looks cool.
Yeah.
All right. Last story of the week here, or I guess, fortnight, is NIO's scooter-sized electric microcar is actually headed for production.
This one, I don't know why. It makes me happy to see these electric micro cars. I'm not a car person, but that works out because these aren't cars. Like they're technically quadricycles. Even though this looks like a little car. I hope you're watching that with us. If you're just listening, I'll try to describe it. I mean, it looks like if you took what was that weird like cubed Honda thing that, you know, like
I think Toyota
weird
or
like.
Nissan made a cube. It was called the
Yeah,
cube.
oh yeah, actually the name cube. Yeah, exactly. So it looks like one of those, but just like scaled down even further. Like it's a tiny, tiny little two-seater car.
It's like a half a
Um,
cube.
yeah, exactly. It's a rectangular prism is what it is, with a windshield. But the cool thing about this is that, like I said, it's not a car; it's a quadricycle. Specifically, it's an L6E quadricycle. So that means that it goes up to 45 kilometers per hour. There's also some weight limit in like the, I don't know, 600, 800 kilos, something like that. But it also qualifies for that AM license you were just looking at, Step. So in a lot of countries, young people can drive these. And in, I think it's France, as early as 14, you can get a license
14.
to drive these. Yeah. And so we've seen that class before. The Renault Twizy, the Microlino, the Eli Zero, the Citroen Ami. There are a lot of microcars starting to come into this category, and they're actually kind of booming in Europe. Like we kind of laugh at this category in the US, but I think unfairly so, because in Europe, these are very I don't know if I should say very. They're popular in cities as an alternative to cars. But what I think is really neat about News system here is that it's built upon the same drivetrain as their NX series electric scooters. And what that means is it shares the same batteries. So, one thing that they're pitching for this is that if you already have a new scooter in this NX line, you can actually buy this microcar without the batteries and you just share the batteries, or you have an extra set of batteries. Now, this car, it has, or this quadricycle, it has a pair of, I think they're 2 or 2.5 kilowatt hour batteries. So it's something like 4 to 5 kilowatt hours total. Then it has two spaces for storing a second pair of batteries. So you get a total of about 8 or 10 kilowatt hours total if you have those second batteries in there. So you actually get some decent range out of this thing. Now, again, it's limited to 45 kilometers per hour. So even though it's like 10 kilowatts or so of power, you're just not going that fast. So you're not needing to use the same power levels as faster cars. So that 8 or 10 kilowatt hours is going to take you much further on something like this. But the fact that it shares those same batteries with the NX scooters, and that you could literally, if you have a scooter and this microcar, you could share batteries between them, is a really neat thing. Also, if you live in an apartment and you don't have a place to plug in your car to charge, you could charge this level 2. It has the capability, but you can also literally just take the batteries out of the back and carry them up to your apartment and charge them in your living room, kind of thing. Like you can just have on-street parking. You don't need a garage. You don't need charging. And so that's another cool advantage here. And the last thing I should mention is that we've seen a lot of concepts for these things, but News is actually headed to production. They're just finishing up homologation testing now. I was talking to the company; it seems like it's going very well. So while they don't have an exact date that these are going to be available, they are preparing for production, and these are actually coming to market. This isn't just like a, hey, check out our cool new thing. They had a check out our cool new thing that I'll be writing about. You can actually see it a little bit in the back there through the windshield. So that's coming in the next day or two when I get that post up. But this is not we've got a cool concept. This is there will be people driving these around, and like you'll be taking pictures of these funky looking cars in probably less than a year from now, kind of thing. So that's very exciting for me. Like I said, I for some reason I'm addicted to these quirky little micro cars that just speak to me for some reason. I guess if you have to be driving a four-wheeled vehicle, I would hope that you're driving the smallest one necessary, and this kind of checks
This
that
is this
box.
is the smallest one.
Yeah, I mean there's not much to it. It's two seats next to each other, surrounded by
That's what's
steel and
wild to
glass.
me. Like I don't understand how they got two seats next to each other um in the bike lane form factor. Like
Yeah. Now,
uh
to be fair, this is probably wider than a traditional. Like this is not meant for the bike lane, right? Like this is meant for the car lane, but it is
okay.
still very very small.
Oh, for some reason I thought this was like bike lane compatible, which also would have been
Oh,
wild. Like to have
yeah.
like a little car on the bike lane. I was
Yeah,
thinking
no,
like
this is
those also, vehicles that
yeah.
UPS delivery.
Yeah, so this
This
is
is not
not
that.
that class.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not that class. This is intended to like take the lane and function like a car. But you can see by the scale, like there are people here. There's someone sitting in it, like you're shoulder to shoulder with your riding partner. This is a very small vehicle. Um, but
Maybe a good first date vehicle, you
there
know.
you go. Yeah, yeah. Don't even give them an option.
Yeah, she doesn't she doesn't have a place to
You're
go,
going shoulder
sadly.
to shoulder.
Yeah. Uh
Yeah, so Um, this is to me just a very exciting future for quadricycles and this type of alternative to cars, because as as more European cities sort of lock down their streets and they have these like car-free zones, or they're allowed for scooters and quadricycles and that sort of thing, I think these are going to become even more popular. They certainly fit a lot of these European cities with small winding roads, that sort of thing. I doubt we're going to see this in the US anytime soon slash ever. At least not this model. Maybe, some other low speed vehicles, neighborhood electric vehicles in the future. But for Europe, absolutely, I see this as an awesome solution. And while there are already some cool ones out there, like my wife and I rented a Citroen Ami for a week in Greece, and like I just fell in love with that thing. I loved it as much as she hated it. Um, there are good options,
Why
but I
did
think
she
this
hate
one
it? Was
has
it the
some.
safety or the size or?
I think for her, like it wasn't here and it wasn't there. Like it was too small and slow to like scratch the car itch for her. Like,
Got
there were
it.
times that we get past, but it wasn't convenient as a bike. Like when we wanted to charge it, we literally had to like drive it up to the front step of the hotel and run an extension cord to it.
Got it.
So, like, yeah, they have the disadvantages of each category, but I guess to me, I'm looking at the advantages of each category. And in
Right.
this one, the huge advantage that it can share batteries with its scooters and that they're removable, which in that case, like we wouldn't have had to literally park it on the front door of the hotel. We could have just carried the
Convenience
batteries into the
is a
room.
higher priority for her, perhaps,
Yeah, yeah, you could say that. So,
and blending in.
yeah, and not like having people gawk at you as they pass you on the
Right.
island
Right.
highways.
Right. So this class of vehicle, and you said it's the AM as well, like 14-year-olds can drive it.
Yeah, well,
Is
in
is it
France.
in France? Yeah, and
Yeah,
Estonia and a few other places. But
there you go. Yeah,
um, curious to me, like, so 14-year-olds driving cars is wild to think about. But that said, I think there's like North Dakota or something in the US, like that's when you can start driving a car because there's like farm equipment's important to. Anyway,
yeah.
do we have a like for neighborhood electric vehicles, is there a age limit? Like I know golf carts like in, Florida are quite popular and I see like prepubescent kids driving those around on the streets. So what is like the thing here? Like what is that? Like neighborhood electric
Yeah.
vehicles? I think it's state by
So
state.
exactly, it's complicated. There are federal regulations, like the LSV, the low speed vehicle standard, is regulated at the federal level, but that's only the vehicle itself. Then states themselves get to decide A, if they even use those regulations or if they set their own, and B, at what age they're allowed to be operated. In almost every place where LSVs are legal, basically it's licensed as a standard car, and so you need to have a car driver's license. And so whatever age you can get your car driver's license is the age.
Okay. And so low speed electric vehicles are not in that area. Like there's no like lower age for low speed electric vehicles, even though I'm sure you've seen this in Florida as well as I. There's like 10-year-old kids driving around golf carts on streets.
Yeah, definitely not at the federal level. I'm not aware of any states that say like, all right, for LSVs, you can actually be like 14. I'm not aware of that. Um, there may be that I just don't know about, but yeah, as far as I know, everywhere where they're legal, they're basically licensed like a car, and you need a car driver's license.
All right, I'm on the page about this, so I will read this off real quick. For a 14-year-old to get a learner's permit, you can do that in the U.S. in Arkansas, Alaska, Iowa, North and South Dakota, and Kansas. Didn't know
I actually
that.
did that in Arkansas. Yeah. I got my
Did you?
learner's permit when I was 14. Yeah.
That's wild. And
You actually
then
have to be 14 and a half, but yeah.
Montana, Idaho, 14 and oh, I think they lowered it then in Arkansas because it's 14 and a half in Montana and Idaho, 14 and 9 months in Michigan, which is like, that's wild. Like you can be driving around Detroit at 14. Wow. And then, yeah, the rest of the countries, 15 or 16. New York, unfortunately, is 16, which is where my kid is. So, boo. All right.
Just move them to Arkansas.
Well, we have a Vermont place, so we talk about getting him permitted there at 15. All right, let's move into the comments. Michael Sprinzelis is the first 5 comments, so we'll start off there. New York City Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch is worse for e-bikes in California, not aiding e-bike purchases. She is the one who lowered e-bike speeds down to 15 miles per hour, and I think she would probably get run over if she wandered into a bike lane at any point because that's universally hated, especially by city bike riders. It kind of eliminates the point of electric bikes entirely. What do you think?
Yeah, those got limited, like sort of did like a global update for those. So they can't even get away with like, oh, you're only supposed to ride at 15. They actually get like governed at 15 now, as opposed to all the delivery boys that are still doing 25 or 30 and are supposed to be doing 15. So I
All
can see
right.
why city bike riders are pretty annoyed.
Yeah. That's hated. He says he was against federal regulations, but Tish makes me think that maybe Fed regs would be a good thing. As a DIY e-biker, that Tenways cable management looks clean to me. Yes, as a DIY person, of course, it's clean. But I mean, the what was it? The G900? No, which is the one
The
that we like?
Seago 800.
Seago 800. They need to work on their naming, but
Yeah.
like the RTDT
Sounds like a
videos,
blender. Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, there's a lot of improvement that can happen there. Too few watt hours for a legit commuter. What was the watt hours on the battery?
It was 720. I think that's reasonable.
That's reasonable. You're a little bit high end, I guess, there. All right. Let's see. Carl, road sign dynos to test vehicles are a form of policing spectacle. The chief effect is creating public fear that you'll get caught cheating rather than actually catching all, I think he means rogue bikes, works. I mean, yeah, I guess like, the thing is though, like, what happens, like reality is like my kid's riding around 40 miles per hour on his Talaria. And then, the cops pull him over. He flicks a button that he installed, and all of a sudden it goes 20 miles per hour and, low torque and everything. So, sorry, guys, my kid's already ahead of you.
Yeah. Though I get like, we talk about how we shouldn't enact overly strict laws. We should just enforce the reasonable laws we have. And
Yes.
so, like, this is an effort at enforcing, right? So, like, is it a little bit of theater? Perhaps. But how many options do they have? At least this way, they are catching some of the ridiculous stuff, like that
Right.
80-mile-an-hour scooter.
Yeah.
Like that's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. Although, like, ridiculous in the sense that, the car that I drive can go 120 miles per hour, and it doesn't mean I'm driving at 120 miles per hour. So,
Yeah, but I feel like if you scale it up, that'd be like a car that can do 500 miles an hour.
right. Like way
I don't know
beyond
what scale
anything
you
safe.
use, but yeah.
All right, Skeptic says
Yeah.
Zero is embracing their European identity with a little scooter. Yeah, it does feel like that.
Yeah, going all Audrey Hepburn on us.
Right. Zero is a story of superior hard-earned product that never became a profitable bestseller. Battery costs make e-motorcycles poor value for anyone other than a hardcore eco-climate-centered purchase. I don't buy that. Like, I think if you're in the city, I think there's more advantages to battery power than not. If you're riding between cities or you're riding from San Francisco to LA, then zeros don't really make sense. But for most people day to day, you can get a lot out of even 100 mile per hour or 100-mile range bike.
Yeah, but therein lies the problem for Zero is that the customer you're describing is not the typical motorcycle customer.
Right.
Right? Like they're thinking, I want to take this out on the weekends and have some fun, not
Right.
100 miles is a sensible commute. Like
Right.
the motorcycle purchaser is not looking for a sensible commute. The scooter purchaser is, and that's why this might work for them. But yeah, they were up against a tough market to begin with when you have the limitations of current battery technology.
Yeah, and everybody else is kind of fallen by the wayside. So like they're doing, they're fixing the problem, I guess. All right, Skeptic says Walterific, who was one of the most popular motorcycle vloggers of the 2010s, has a Zero FX. He said it's a terrible motorcycle, but also his favorite one to ride. Maybe that's a good microcosm of Zero motorcycles. Favorite, but terrible.
Yeah, you can have something that's fun but not good.
Right. Carl says microcar equals actual sustainable car. To be honest, a car needs limited range speed to keep the lifetime emissions impact in check. Small production emissions and much smaller energy impact eventually will be the norm. We'll see about that. People won't shift to rail for medium long distance if cars persist as they are today. So microfying cars is crucial.
That's an interesting argument for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if people will accept that. Like, we're going to make your car smaller so that you take the train. I mean,
Right.
the logic follows. I like that part, but I don't know that people will accept it.
Right. I don't disagree, but my family started traveling on Amtrak this year, and it's been awesome. I'm lucky, though, because I have a station 10 minutes from my home. Do we know where Skeptic's from? I think he's from the East Coast. Yeah. I think in the past he said, I know Carl in San Diego. I know where he's from. We're taking our dog with us on a train trip tomorrow. Oh, he's near St. Louis. Oh, that's interesting. That's not where I would have guessed.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the coast, it's a little easier to get on trains. But yeah, so the thing about, I talked about this with the California regulation or the California e-bike voucher thing, is like one of the things about trains is like they're big and they can carry bikes. So if you bring a bike on a train, that kind of checks off your last mile problem. Like if you live a few miles or 10 minutes at like Skeptic does from a train station, that kind of makes train rides a little bit more reasonable, a lot more reasonable actually. So it's interesting that you make that connection with like the micro mobility plus trains equals a way to get rid of cars, which is something that we're kind of really focused on here.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, like e-bikes or e-scooters, basically micromobility and cars are like and trains are a match made in heaven. Like it's exactly what you described. The ability to like get from your house or wherever you are to the train and then do the train for the long distance part and then get exactly to whatever address you're trying to get to is a beautiful thing. Like it should happen more in more places. Like I just got back from Italy. It's great taking the trains. Where I live in Tel Aviv, we've got pretty good train system. It's getting better. They're building a metro in the city as well. Every time I'm in the US, it's like, how do I get around? Oh, great, another $40 Uber. Ugh. So
right.
That's where it breaks down.
Yep. All right, that's pretty much it for the comments.
All right, thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. We had a lively crowd this time, and we're looking forward to having you guys back here in another 2 weeks for the next episode of the Wheelie Podcast. We'll see you next time, everyone.